Ravens 53-man roster is set. We'll talk about who made the team, some surprising cuts. We'll talk about who could go on the practice squad tomorrow. All that and more in today's episode of the Flock Rundown.
Ravens Flock. The Flock Rundown is the place to be.
Motionless brainwaves attempt to swim their way to sense, can't tame the untamed.
What's up, Ravens fans? My name is Ryan, and welcome back to another episode of the Flock Rundown. So the Ravens 53-man roster is set. They finally announced it. I don't know why they wait hours and hours after 4 o'clock to announce the official 53. I know there's some leaks and stuff, but you don't know the exact 53. You don't know who's going on IR and all the details, so I wanted to wait until they put it out. They finally put it out. Let's dive into who made the team and some surprising cuts. I actually want to start with the biggest surprise, in my opinion, and that is Jalen Armour-Davis getting cut. I did not see this coming at all. I pretty much guessed every single 53-man roster spot correctly except Jalen Armour-Davis. I just did not see him getting cut. I thought he had an outstanding preseason and offseason in general, training camp. This was his most healthy offseason. The coaches were also raving about him a few months ago, but I guess the Ravens, going into his final year of control, they don't have control of him next year. I guess they just wanted to move on. And most of the guys that were cut today will end up right back on the Ravens practice squad. Jalen Armour-Davis is the one that I'm not sure about, though. I definitely could see him getting claimed by another team. He had his best offseason in a while, his most healthy offseason in a while. If he was battling injuries this year, I would have been like, okay, I clearly see why the Ravens cut him. He's in and out of the lineup, and he's not really available, which is the story of his career for the most part. But that's not the case this year. He was pretty healthy. I know he missed a couple days in training camp. He got sick and had a minor injury months ago. But for the most part, Jalen Armour-Davis has been there. He's been playing in the preseason games early and looked like the best corner. I thought he looked like, I know it was a smaller sample size, but I thought he was having better reps and looking better than TJ Tampa did. But I think it comes down to the team control. Jalen Armour-Davis is a free agent after this year. The Ravens have the rights to TJ Tampa for a few more. So they're looking at developmental guys and upside. Other than Jalen, I really wasn't surprised by anything. Beau Braid didn't make the team. That definitely sucks. I was rooting for him, but with the emergence of Lowry, the way that they were playing, their playing time in the last preseason game, I thought it was pretty obvious that Lowry was going to make it over Beau Braid. But hopefully Beau Braid can come right back on the practice squad. I don't want to see him go anywhere else. Like I said, a lot of these guys that were cut today should come right back, and depending on injuries or matchups, those guys can be active for game days, so it's not all over for the relationship between the Ravens and a lot of these guys. I think that they'll still be on the team, but it does suck for Beau Braid. CJ Okoye was another guy that was on the bubble that I thought had a chance to make it, but the Ravens are obviously trying to sneak him on the practice squad, and I get that move too. I predicted that was going to happen because I thought that the Ravens were a lot more comfortable with John Jenkins right now. I've seen a lot of fans not very high on John Jenkins, but he's a vet presence that can stuff the run and has a lot of NFL experience. His age is a benefit in this scenario. He's not going to be out there playing a ton, and I just think that CJ Okoye, while his future is way brighter because he's got a lot of years left and a lot of room to develop and a lot of natural ability and size, I just think John Jenkins will help us right now. And Okoye could be a little bit risky to toss into games right now. We want to develop him a little bit more. So hopefully he goes to the practice squad and can develop, because I do see Okoye becoming a piece that will make this roster next year, the year after. I definitely see CJ Okoye being involved. Hopefully he can stay on the practice squad, though. We also cut Brent Urban, but that's really just a handshake deal. Brent's going to get cut and then pulled back onto the practice squad, and then will be elevated for some game days as needed. And they did that last year, too. They've done that a few times with Brent Urban, so not surprised at all. I definitely saw that one coming, but Brent Urban technically is cut, but I really do expect him back. Isaiah Likely not going on IR was a slight surprise. I did predict that he would go on IR, but that was really just to clear a spot for one of these undrafted free agents. The fact that the Ravens did not put Isaiah Likely on IR just tells me that he's right on schedule. I think he'll be back in week 2, week 3. He's definitely not going to be back in week 4 or 5, or they probably would have just put him on IR. So I think he'll be back earlier in the season, which sounds like great news. I am excited about that. I was just trying to be a little bit more safe, and I thought it would just be smart to bring them back in week 5. I don't want to rush someone back who just had surgery, who broke their foot, fractured their foot, But if he's good, he's good. I'm going to trust the doctors. I just hope that we ease him in. We don't need Isaiah Likely to be out there a ton early in the season. We have a lot of other weapons on the offense. We have Mark Andrews still at tight end. I just don't think that we need to overuse Isaiah Likely in any type of way. So hopefully they just ease him in. And I am excited, though, man. We're going to see Isaiah Likely a little bit sooner than I thought. But let's dive into the story of this roster, and that is all three undrafted free agents that were being debated. Jay Higgins, Ruben Lowry, and Keon Martin made the roster. Just an incredible story, man, especially Keon Martin. This guy was a tryout. He wasn't even signed right after the draft. They brought him in on a tryout basis. He obviously did enough to impress them and get signed, and then just kept the momentum rolling and made a real run at getting on this roster, and did get on this roster, man. Congrats to Keon Martin. Guy's been making plays throughout the preseason. He had the safety in the end zone. He was flying around all over the place, blowing up plays. He had the pick six in the last preseason game. Keon Martin did more than enough. He's great nickel depth behind Marlon Humphrey. I think that's why that they kept him there, is he's going to be, the nickel outside of Marlon Humphrey. If anything happened to Marlon, or if we needed to move Marlon to the outside, if there were any other injuries on the outside, then Keon Martin can fill in at nickel. So what a story, man. Congrats to him. And then Ruben Lowry and Jay Higgins, these were two other undrafted free agents that had a little bit more hype throughout training camp. Ruben Lowry's been the star of training camp. He had multiple interceptions throughout the offseason and got another one in the preseason, just continued to play really well. I knew his chances were looking pretty good in the last preseason game when they started him, and then they pulled him out a little earlier than everyone else. I was like, all right, man, Ruben Lowry is on the team, and that is another guy just well-deserved, is going to provide great safety depth. And then Jay Higgins. Jay Higgins, who would have thought we would have had 5 inside linebackers before Jay Higgins emerged? That's a lot of inside linebackers, keeping guys like Jake Hummel too, because he's a special teams guy and a depth linebacker. But Jay Higgins, in my opinion, will be ahead of Jake Hummel when it comes to the defensive depth chart. Obviously, Jake Hummel's on the team because I think he's going to be one of our best special teams players. He's one of the best special teams players in the entire NFL. So that's why the Ravens brought him in. And I was like, they're not going to keep 5 inside linebackers. But as the offseason went, as the preseason went, I was like, how can you not keep Jay Higgins? I had to make room. That's why I put Isaiah Likely on IR in my prediction, because I was like, we got to make room for Jay Higgins. This guy is smart. He's all over the field. And I just really feel like this is one of those gem undrafted stories. And I think Zach Orr probably feels that as well. Zach Orr's been speaking very highly of Jay Higgins, and he probably feels like that's a younger him, because that was the same road that Zach Orr had. Zach Orr ends up being an all-pro before the injury. So I don't know. I'm not saying Jay Higgins is going to be an all-pro, but I'm just letting you know Jay Higgins has not really put out any bad film. And I know he went undrafted because of his combine, and he's a slower linebacker. It doesn't matter. He plays fast on the field, fast and physical. He plays like a Raven. He's smart. And I'm glad Jay Higgins made this team, man. Congrats to all the undrafted free agents. It's crazy that the Ravens roster is as stacked as it is, and we had 11 draft picks, and we still end up having 3 undrafted free agents make the team. I mean, that's insane, man. Usually we have 1, Usually we're fighting to who's the undrafted free agent that's going to make the team. We had 3 this year. It's a great story, man. But more important than the story, these guys earned it. That's why they're on the team. We cut our 7th round pick in Dellinger. He's probably going to head back to the practice squad, hopefully. But we cut him because we liked one of the undrafted guys better. You couple your back end draft picks. If they're not playing better than the undrafted free agents, you got to play the undrafted free agents. It's whoever plays best. And then we had the 2 season-ending injuries at corner with the 6th round picks in Kone and Longerbeam. We did get an update on Kone today. He's already undergone full repairs on the ACL, MCL, and lateral meniscus. Recovery timeline is expected to be between 10 and 12 months, barring any setbacks. So prayers up for a speedy recovery. But looking at this 53, the Ravens have everything they need to go get this job done and have a really successful season and make a run towards that Lombardi. I mean, there's no excuses. There's depth at every position. You obviously don't know what the season's going to bring. You don't know who's going to get banged up and, things like that. I was surprised about the Jalen Armour-Davis cut just because some of our corners are dealing with some injuries as well and have some injury risk, but it is what it is. They obviously wanted to move on. Other than that, I think this roster is pretty straightforward. I mean, the offensive line ended up being exactly what we thought. Shout out to Corey Bullock, though. Great story there as well. Way to earn that spot. He was kind of a late bloomer as the offseason went on, and he just really impressed and earned that backup center spot. He's also versatile too. You know, he can play guard as well, and I think the Ravens they love that versatility, and he really shined at backup center. I mean, this guy came in and commanded it. So shout out to Corey Bullock. On defense, David Ajabo ended up making it. I think that Adisa Isaac injury really cleared that spot. I don't really know who else he was competing with. Malik Ham was cut earlier today. Hopefully he's back on the practice squad, but Ravens are rolling with David Ajabo. Not surprised, not in love with everything I've seen from him, but you know, he's the very back end of our outside linebackers. It's not like this guy is going to be consistently relied on, and we've seen some greatness out of David Ajabo, especially early on, definitely in college, and you never know. He could recapture it at any time. He's not an old guy, you know, so hopefully he can keep developing and provide some solid minutes for the Ravens. But, you know, congrats to David Ajabo for making the team. We did end up going with 4 running backs. I know that was a slight debate within the fan base as well, and I didn't think we needed to go with 4, but I definitely expected us to go with 4 after Harbaugh's comments and how much Rasheen Ali was playing. But Rasheen Ali also deserved it. I mean, he is not only a depth running back who looked really good throughout the preseason. He has a lot of explosiveness, and I think this is the best I've ever seen Rasheen Ali look. He also is the backup kick returner, and I mean, starting kick returner, because you play 2 of them. If they're kicking away from Keaton Mitchell, they're going to kick to Rasheen Ali, and we've seen him have some explosive kick returns as well. So shout out to Rasheen Ali. He made the roster here. I'm feeling really good about this roster, and we'll probably get some other guys back as well. We know Adisa Isaac is probably going to come back mid-season. Emory Jones Jr. still on the non-football injury list, so he'll be out for the first 4 weeks, but we could see him later in the season a little bit. I don't know how much he's going to play. He's not going to end up starting unless he needs to, because he wasn't there all offseason. I wish we'd had a little bit more right guard competition, or just guard competition in general, but it is what it is. Maybe they thought, you know, Emory Jones Jr. was going to be ready a lot earlier. He's not. He's still on the non-football injury list. At some point, he'll be back, but I mean, overall, this roster is ready to roll, man. I don't really have any complaints about the roster. I think we're deep in a lot of different positions. Practice squad can start being filled out at 1 p.m. tomorrow, so I'm sure tomorrow evening, tomorrow night, we're going to have a lot of guys that are signing back to the practice squad. As soon as we have an official practice squad list, I'll come on here and talk about the practice squad as well. I think Eric DeCosta also speaks to the media tomorrow, so that'll be interesting. We'll get some clarity on some of his thinking and decision making and stuff like that. But let me know what you guys are thinking about this roster. Was there anything you would do differently? Are you happy with it? Are you just ready for Buffalo week 1? I know I am, man. I can't wait for the season to get going, but appreciate you guys for rocking with me. Appreciate you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Flock Rundown. Have a beautiful rest of your night, and I'll let the greatest linebacker in the history of the game take us out.
Ravens Flock. The Flock Rundown is the place to be. My man Ryan has been a lifelong Ravens fan since he was born. So I'm telling you now, it's about to go down. The podcast, the Flock Rundown. Ravens, baby. Nothing gets better than waking up and wondering how high we can fly. Tune in.